Hi everyone, I'm attorney Aiden Durham with 180 Law Co. in Denver, Colorado, and you're watching All Up in Your Business. We talk a lot about LLCs on this channel. I've done videos on starting LLCs, contributing money to LLCs, how you pay yourself from your LLC. I've done a lot of videos about LLCs, but we've never really dug into the basics of an LLC. And I mean, we've all heard of them, but what is an LLC? What actually is it, and what does it mean? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. Before we get into all of that, please be sure to give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel and share this video to all of your friends. And don't forget to hit that little bell button so you get notifications whenever I post a new video. You'll also want to check the description for some additional information. I've got some freebie downloads and guides there for y'all too. And just as with the last couple of videos I put up, I've got some random kittens walking around. And so, if you see some climbing on me or jumping around in the background, just enjoy it because they're effing adorable. All right, so what's an LLC? LLC, what do the letters stand for? It stands for Limited Liability Company. The limited liability part, that means that the LLC's owners, which are called the members, the LLC's members aren't going to be personally responsible or personally liable for the debts or the liabilities of the LLC. So that's where that limited liability part comes in, is it limits the liability to the members themselves. If the LLC is sued, the members don't risk losing their personal assets in that lawsuit. An LLC is a business entity that is formed and recognized at the state level. In other words, it's the state, not the federal government, not any kind of local government, the state government that you'll deal with to form and maintain your LLC. And then all of the laws of the state where the LLC is formed will apply to that LLC. Now, LLCs are kind of new creations. They haven't been around for a very long time. LLCs were actually invented by the state of Wyoming in 1977, according to Wikipedia. Prior to then, most businesses were either structured as corporations where the shareholders are the owners and the corporation is run by a board of directors and there's a double taxation because the corporation has to pay its own corporate taxes. So things were either formed as corporations or as partnerships where there's one or more people involved. The partners manage and run the business, but they're all personally liable for all of the debts and all of the liabilities of the partnership itself. But there's no kind of corporate tax. The partners are taxed at the individual level for the partnership income. So most things were either partnerships or corporations. And I guess businesses were clamoring for some new way to combine the two worlds and have the best of both. They wanted the management and tax ease of the partnership, but the liability protection benefits that the corporation gave. And so thus, the LLC was born. And then eventually the IRS got on board and was like, okay, we'll tax people like a partnership, even if they're in an LLC. And then once that happened, then all the other states kind of jumped on the bandwagon and started implementing their own state laws to permit LLC formations. Compared to corporations in particular, LLCs are relatively easy to form and maintain. It's a really simple business structure. The structure of an LLC can be really flexible, and in most states there are minimal requirements as far as ongoing compliance and regular filings. Of course, it all varies state by state because each state has its own laws regarding LLCs, but for the most part, and especially compared to corporations, LLC members can freely change the management, tax structure, really whatever portion of the LLC structure that they want to. LLCs are formed by filing a document. It's typically called Articles of Organization or Certificate of Formation. Depending on the state, you would file the Articles of Organization with the Secretary of State in the state where you want to form the LLC. In many states, the LLC officially exists as soon as the Articles of Organization are filed. I briefly mentioned this, but LLCs are owned by the members. Members are the ones who own the LLC itself. LLCs can be owned by one person, which is typically referred to as a single member LLC, or there can be multiple people involved, and that's typically referred to as a multi-member LLC. Members can be individual people, but they can also be other LLCs. So an LLC can be a member of another LLC. A member can be a corporation or a trust or really any other kind of entity or person. There's very few restrictions on who can be a member of an LLC. Also, members don't have to be U.S. citizens or permanent residents here. You don't have to be physically located in the state that you're forming the LLC in. So as far as location requirements and all of that goes for members, it's pretty open and flexible. Management of an LLC can vary. LLCs can be run and managed by the members themselves. This is typically called a member-managed LLC. Or they can be run by managers, which are elected by the members. And this is typically called a manager-managed LLC. In a member-managed LLC, the members are agents of the LLC. They are authorized to act on behalf of the LLC, and they can bind the LLC to legally binding contracts. In a manager-managed LLC, though, it's the managers who are authorized to act on behalf of the LLC. And most of the management decisions and day-to-day operations are handled by the manager. And then the big decisions regarding the LLC itself, like dissolution of the LLC or changing any of the LLC documents, usually those decisions are reserved for the members. Managers can be members or non-members of the LLC, so you can have a manager who is also a member, or managers can be non-members. You don't have to be a member in order to be a manager. And then LLCs can also be structured more like corporations. They can have like a managing board or a board of managers that votes on major decisions, similar to how a board of directors would in a corporation. So this is really part of the benefits of an LLC, is that the management really can be structured however you want it to be. When we start talking about LLC taxation, that's usually where some of the confusion starts to come up. In the state's eyes, and as far as the state is concerned, the LLC is a completely separate entity from its members. The LLC and the members are separate and distinct beings. But in the IRS's eyes, the LLC essentially doesn't exist. LLCs are considered pass-through entities, which means that the profits and losses pass through to the members of the LLC. The LLC doesn't have to pay its own corporate taxes or do its own corporate tax return. Instead, the LLC members report their share of the profits and losses on their own individual income tax. So in a single member LLC, it's treated as if all of the income to the LLC is the income to the member themselves, and they're taxed at the personal level on the LLC's income. With multi-member LLCs, the profits and losses are allocated to the members, usually in proportion to their ownership interest. So if it's a 50-50 ownership between two members, the profits and losses are allocated 50% to each member, and then each member reports those on their own individual tax returns. Now, this is how LLCs are taxed by default, but another nice thing about LLCs is that they can change their taxation and elect to be taxed in a different way, such as an S corporation or taxed as a C corporation. Those topics are beyond the subject matter of this video, but I do have a few others that talk about S corporations and C corporations, so you can check back to those if you want to learn more. So to summarize and wrap it all up, a few of the primary advantages of an LLC are, of course, that liability protection for the members. That's probably the biggest one. You get the benefit of that pass-through taxation, so it's relatively easy tax reporting, and you don't have that double taxation that you would with a corporation. LLCs are relatively inexpensive and easy to form and to maintain. And then finally, it just kind of makes you look a little bit more legit, I guess. That's what a lot of people think, is that you have LLC at the end of your business name. It means you're real and official business. So that's a little bit of benefit too. And of course, there are some disadvantages to an LLC. That pass-through taxation, it's often good, but it can be a negative depending on the situation. Sometimes there are investors who don't want to be taxed as a pass-through entity, or sometimes there are other situations where pass-through entity taxation just isn't the best. LLCs also aren't always great if you're looking for investors for your business, or if you plan on going public one day. Typically, investors feel more comfortable investing in more traditional corporations, and you can issue shares of stock in the corporation to investors. So if you're looking for big time angel investors or have an idea of going public someday, then the LLC may not be the best structure for you. And then the other disadvantage is that there is self-employment tax. You don't get the double taxation like you do with a corporation, but because of that pass-through entity taxation, the IRS adds some self-employment tax to your income too, so they get a little bit more out of it. So whether or not to operate and form your business as an LLC, it's very much fact dependent on your circumstances and the situation of you and your business. So because of that, it's always best to talk with an attorney who's licensed in your state before you form an LLC, just to be sure that it is the best option for you and that you're going to go about it the right way. That's all for this episode. Drop a comment below. Let me know what you think. And also be sure to check out some of my old videos if you want more information on LLCs, or if you have more questions about LLCs. I've got lots of info out there, so you can check my old videos for all that stuff too. And then of course, check out my blog on my website for more information on LLCs and starting a business. I guess we didn't get as much kitten action today as we were hoping for, so I'll just give you guys a quick little kitten shot so that this isn't all in vain. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm Aiden Durham, and I'll see you next time.